This is Simon Gontrenko, Safeguard Solutions, and I have here with me today for my first inaugural podcast ever. So Todd Mendenhall. Todd owns a cleaning company that he's had for many, many years. And among contracts that Todd has in the area where he is geographically in the state of Iowa, his contracts include a global real estate giant and the global social media giant. And over the last couple of weeks, there's been a lot of chatter in the World Wide Web on the whole issue and the topic of cleaning in the post-COVID or in the environments, in the critical environments informed by COVID. And so I know that you just came, Todd, last week from having some meetings of things that getting back to normal, and just discussing on what all is going on. And so I just wanted to ask you some questions, just pick your brain a little bit. If you can kind of tell me what are some of the biggest changes that you see happening in the world of cleaning, because you had mentioned to me right before we started recording that you felt like the cleaning is never going to be the same. So talk me a little bit through some of the changes you're seeing.
Yeah, I think the number one is prevention. So I think the majority of our large volume data centers and public spaces will go to some type of scanning where they're running through there's some pretty sophisticated scanning equipment that notes about a 4 or 0.04% heat range. So any fevers, anything like that will be noted at the entrance. I think the big thing is let's keep them out of the buildings before they even get in. So that'd be that's all new. I've never seen that in all my years in the industry. So there's a lot of technology going during security checkpoints and entrances that I've never seen before. I'm seeing a lot. So once we're in the building, I'm seeing a lot of disinfection, sanitization, especially as it relates to culinary spaces and high-use public spaces, conference rooms, anything that is a shared space. A regular sanitization that we really at a level that we've really never seen before. So I guess those would be my two big areas. Anything that's culinary related or shared spaces and the entrances would be my quick answer to your question.
No, I appreciate that. That's very, very interesting. So right as you were talking, I had a thought that popped in my mind. So what about, let's say that I am working on the yard. I'm one of the grounds crews, and I'm working in the yard in the middle of summer, and I get hot and I get sweaty and everything, in the 100-degree weather, and I want to come into the building. I want to use a restroom facility in the building, and I get scanned. And how's that going to impact the temperature that I'm reading? Because obviously I'm going to be pretty hot.
You know what? That's a good question. I'm not well versed enough in that technology to how it knows, but I have set in on several of and it's really sophisticated. They can do 20 people at a time.
Wow.
I'm assuming that there's somehow some technology that allows for that. I don't know the answers to that, but it's awful sophisticated. So they know the difference between body temperature and a fever. That's a good question. I don't know that. I don't know that.
That's very interesting.
But that'll be interesting to see how that works. But I can tell you, they put us through, and it's like 0.04%. It's like 98.9 triggers them, and they would go to a separate, and maybe that's where it is, to answer your question, they go to a secondary line.
Gotcha.
And then there's another type of technology that differentiates between body temperature and a fever or some other illness. Because this initial one does like a broad scan, so you can bring really massive amounts of people in all at once. And so I think that when they go to a secondary check-in, if you will, that those types of situations would be addressed at that time.
Sure, that makes sense. So, very, very interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah, point. Right. So, but a lot of technology, a lot of upfront. Let's just keep them at the, let's before they even come into the building. Sure. We're seeing things that I've never seen, especially in our meat packing and those type of industries that really have had a real issue with COVID.
Yeah, I think I saw someone from Microsoft over the last month or so say something to the effect of that in the last 2 months, we have made about a 5-year leap in the use of technology, in the adoption of technology, and so for sure, this COVID-related change has certainly advanced us quite rapidly forward, and we
Right.
made some leaps and bounds in that.
And then I think that CDC just came out with, they were talking about a lot of people that are asymptomatic, and then
Mhm.
now they're kind of backing back down from that. And the majority of people, of course, not everything in this world is all or none, but the majority of people are showing some types of symptoms or some types of signs of having COVID. So that technology, I think, is going to be really popular in
Mm.
high volume, high traffic areas to
Yeah.
screen them before they come in the facility.
Wow, that's very interesting. I've talked to a number of people too over the last month or so, and especially those that have traveled through some Asian airports. I believe Singapore is the one that comes to mind. I've never been to Singapore, but my understanding is that there's technology that's there as you're entering. It automatically scans you and, among other things, takes your body temperature. So it's going to be interesting to see the incorporation of those kinds of things in more of a day-to-day life in this critical environment space.
Right. And I think that that's exactly the technology, like the airport stuff, where
Yeah.
they're before you even get on the plane or
Right.
any type of facility, you're going through a checkpoint before you even get to the check-in. You know,
Right.
you're already being pre-checked at your car or when you're entering the facility. So
Right.
I'd say that that's the huge change, and there
Yeah.
a lot of data center. They're building facilities for this, you know, where they didn't have those areas before. They're building a flow or a lobby
Right.
to facilitate that type of
Right.
technology.
And
So
so to play devil's advocate here, because we are, after all, operating today in the United States of America, which for a long time has been called the land of the free and the home of the brave. My question to you is, and this is personally, I want to preface this question by saying this is strictly a personal opinion. Given that the information that's coming to the fore right now, you know, a lot of the research and a lot of the things that we're seeing, even down to some of the leading scientists, I think based out of UK, whose projections for this global pandemic have actually resulted in these really strict lockdowns all over the world. Now these scientists are coming out and saying, well, maybe we went too far in recommending these lockdowns, and we're seeing the projections, or we're seeing the results rather, coming out of countries like Sweden that didn't implement these really, really strict lockdowns, and their results are not any different from those countries that did. And so given all that, and given that some folks out there saying this is basically just a bit of a flu with some complications and so on and so forth, what are you hearing? What's the chatter among the people in your circles? You've already stated the fact that this is, you know, the clean world is never going to be the same. Do you think we're headed in the right direction? Do you think that's is it a bit of an overkill, or is that kind of, and I know it's a controversial question, so I just wanted to throw it out there.
yeah, I do think that there is some pandemic overindulgence. I do think that there is some levels that are overstated, and that people are taking it and putting systems and processes in place that are one, not sustainable, and two, are so caustic that it ruins their way of doing their business. I think that most of them are, if we can do it and it doesn't there's a cost factor, but most of them are, does it affect the way that we're doing our daily business? Most of them are willing to do that and put them in place, as long as it's not so caustic that it refrains from them doing their core business. So I think most people want to use common sense and do those measures and steps that are prudent and are financially viable without really getting into where it's so troublesome or caustic that it refrains from their day-to-day life. So I think, you know, when people, you see at all ranges, even in the data center
Right.
segment, you see a wide range. We'll go to one data center and they're doing this, and then you'll go next door and they're like, well, we would never, you know, that. So the problem is that it's so new that there's no real set of standards. So
Right.
everybody, kind of like a language, everybody's interpreted it, all of this feed and whatever they're listening to. And, you know, you talk to somebody in this part of the country and this is what's happening there because they're listening to this source, and you hear somebody across and they're not, it's completely disconnected. So it's so new that there's not, we haven't had enough time to digest what exactly it is. And even now, we probably today will hear new news that, well, what you did yesterday is no longer viable. You need to be doing this. So it's the interpretation, and that's what's really, and so I think I'll go back to most people are doing what makes sense, common sense, and that really, I'm really seeing technology, because that's easy for people to buy and implement, and it broadcasts a wide net over a lot. If they can do that and do it easily, then I see a lot of movement in that area. So, but it is difficult because there's no unique, there's a standard, like we use the imperial system in the United States, and you know what an inch is, and you know what a foot is, and we just don't know those answers, so everybody's interpreting it as they see fit or the best they can.
And so to use your words, our imperial system, but that was provided by, we used to look to WHO or CDC, and that particular system, of course, has kind of been up and down. Early on we said, I remember one of the things I was actually quoting out of CDC and WHO saying that people in the United States are not at risk for mass infections. And then, we used to say masks don't help. Now go ahead and wear masks. You have to have a proper mask. And everyone says that any face covering. So it's kind of been up and down as well. So to your point, you're absolutely right. The reason there's confusion in the ranks, if you will, is because our governing authorities, whatever they may be, have certainly not provided a uniform line that has been the same ever since from the very beginning of this. It's been up and down and all around. And, sometimes our instructions have been almost more confusing than even not having anything, or than not having.
And they've really backed down, like you said, from their initial stuff. They say, well, that's no longer, and so that undermines it, and people, so like you said, you just have to kind of, I think at a high level, you need to do what is best in terms of, you can easily put in some stuff in regards to cleaning that we know that is factual, that we know is, and so I think even if you overdo it in some of those regards, time and resources, that it's not ill or going to be negatively impacted your business. And that's why I say, I think it's okay to let's put in some parameters, especially as we regard to cleaning SOPs and how we're doing it, and go over a little bit, just because it's not very caustic. It doesn't cost a lot of money. And what is the downfall of it? There's really not a lot of downfall to it. So I think you're seeing a lot of that now. Specific on mask, I'm reading a little downfall, but at the end of the day, is there a significant amount of downfall in buying people cloth masks? I'm not seeing us, whether the debate is they work or not is up there, but there's not a lot of downfall or negativity from wearing a mask. And I just use that as one point as a, I don't see a lot of cost, and it's not a lot of negativity. You're not doing anything that's going to really cause anybody real harm. So why not do it if in doubt? And so I'm seeing a lot of that where,
I see.
Okay, no cost, no real downside. Let's go ahead and do it, So I think that when you get into a lot of cost and it's maybe has a negative, or then you really got to weigh what's best for my center or what's best for me. So.
And so let's pick up on that last point that you just made, because in a previous statement, I picked up on something that you stated, and you used the word sustainable, and just now you talked about cost. And so my assumption when you were talking about something being sustainable or not sustainable, my assumption is that you were talking about cost. And without me asking you to open your books or anything like that, my question to you is, and this is something that's kind of been in the back of my mind ever since we started into this, what has these new guidelines, this new type of cleaning that you guys have had to do, what has that done to your bottom line?
Yeah, we've had a large increase in our existing customers and people calling that really have never had a sophisticated or any type of cleaning before. So we've seen a significant uptick in our business, both in existing customers and new customers, especially in the technology business. The data center world in particular is really small in terms of the people that can manage it and know what they're doing within a data center, how to carry themselves, and what the cleaning specifications are. So we've seen a real uptick in our business. How do we do it? And then, it's like has its own ecosystem, because there's the data halls themselves. There's usually some exercise or some fitness areas. There's culinary. And so it hits a lot of different aspects, and a lot of them within even those, there are different worlds within those data centers. So we're seeing a large uptick on what the specifications are, how often they're managed or addressed, meaning common areas are getting a lot more than just a once a day, or it being much more aggressive in terms of how we're managing them on a day-to-day basis. So it's really been a large uptick, especially on the disinfectant end. How do we kill COVID? I hear that about every day. I'll hear it today. How do we kill COVID? How does it, what's the difference between cleaning, disinfecting, and sanitizing?
Right.
And all those words, and how are we doing all that in my individual area? The fitness director, the culinary director, the
Right.
data center manager, the office director, and they're all having different needs, and how we're managing all those.
And so the last question that I have, I don't want to take too much of your time today, and I do appreciate you making the time for me. So the last question, I guess, has to do with kind of where we are in the supply chain area of things, because I do know that early on the supplies were very limited, and there was you had to do a little bit of work to try to find your whether disinfectants or sanitizers or those kinds of things. Where has that normalized any at all, or are you still having a hard time with that?
Yeah, it's kind of product specific. We are having some hard times in several categories. Traditional sanitizer through the traditional model is still tough, but there's been a lot of people getting the sanitizer.
Mm-hmm.
We have seen some, not through traditional sources, but others. We've seen the sanitizer come around. I would say that the problem areas are sanitizing wipes, what a layman would call a Clorox wipe,
Right.
and vinyl gloves or disposable gloves. Our manufacturers are telling us through the summer. The disinfectant is kind of coming and going a little bit. It's not as bad. I would say that the two worst are gloves, disposable gloves, and Clorox or a type of disinfectant wipe. The supply chain is broke. We're having people, there's a hoarding, there's a little of everything going on, people using them that have never used them before. So I still think we'll see that through the fall. In some levels, that we'll see some shortages of products. Some of them have gotten better, and some of them are getting worse. So, but I still think we'll have supply disruptions here for the foreseeable future.
Wow. So how many years have you been in this business, Todd?
30 years. This year I've been 30 years.
So you're a veteran. I mean, 3 decades in this business. You've kind of been around and seen it come and go, and up and down and everything else. What, in conclusion, as we're kind of closing this out, what are some of the words of wisdom that you'd have for some of the younger guys that are just starting in this business, or maybe that are fortunate or unfortunate, I don't know which way you look at it, enough to just get into this business around this time? What's some of the advice you might have for them?
It's good people. You always have to differentiate on people, because it's really a people business. It's really how we hire, train, and maintain our employees is really going to be the win or not. And that is that will be the differentiator in your business. A lot of people can go out and sell work and get work. It's how you manage it, and how you treat those employees long term will make you successful or not. So it's really, I would focus less on sales model and more on the employee model of how you're hiring, training, and managing employees, because that's really what is going to be the differentiator. In 30 years, it's that has been you you think you want to sell something, but and which is great to sell something, but you still have to have the people there. And
Sure.
for sustainability, it's really
Sure.
about the people. So I would, there's nothing wrong with focusing on sales, but you have to have a very strong and robust HR department. That would be
Absolutely.
my number one.
Yeah.
It's kind of not about the cleaning. It's more about the people.
Isn't it
So,
true for so many other things in life too? So,
yeah,
Todd, thank
exactly.
you so much for making the time for us today. Todd Mendenhall, Cleaning Solutions out of Des Moines, Iowa. Apparently, Todd, you're good people, because only that type of people can make it in this business and do it successfully for 30 years. So thank you so much. I hope you have a good day, and I wish you all the success and many more years in this business, impacting people and really making the world a cleaner place, right?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Simon.
Appreciate it, Todd. Bye.
Absolutely. Have a good day.
You too.